In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars burned cold and planets drifted in endless silence, humanity fought to survive. The Galactic Empire had risen like a storm, swallowing civilizations whole and leaving only ruins in its wake. Its fleets stretched across the cosmos, enforcing its will with iron fists and unrelenting power. Entire species bent under the weight of its rule, their worlds stripped bare for resources to fuel the Empire's insatiable hunger. But even in the darkest times, there were sparks of resistance. Among them was Captain Ryan Carter, a man whose name carried both respect and sorrow. He commanded the SS Odyssey, one of Earth's last warships, a vessel that had seen better days but still held together through sheer determination and ingenuity. The ship creaked and groaned as it moved through space, patched up so many times it looked more like a flying junkyard than a battleship. Yet, despite its flaws, the Odyssey remained a symbol of hope, a fragile ember flickering against the overwhelming darkness. Ryan wasn't a hero by any traditional measure. His face bore the lines of sleepless nights and countless defeats. His brown hair was streaked with gray, though he wasn't old enough for it to be natural. Years of loss and failure weighed heavily on him, but his eyes still burned with resolve. He believed, perhaps foolishly, that humanity could rise again if given a chance. That belief kept him going when others would have given up. Beside him stood Lieutenant Megan Hayes, the heart and soul of the Odyssey. Her red hair always seemed to escape whatever attempt she made to tie it back, framing a face marked by intelligence and stubbornness. Megan wasn't just an engineer, she was a miracle worker. She had spent years keeping the ancient ship running, coaxing life out of systems that should have died decades ago. Without her, the Odyssey wouldn't have lasted a week in battle. Though she often joked about retiring to some quiet planet, everyone knew she loved the thrill of fixing problems no one else could solve. The rest of the crew was small but tight-knit. Each member brought something unique to the table, whether it was Corporal Lisa Bennett's sharp aim or Dr. Alan Foster's encyclopedic knowledge of alien technology. They were survivors bound together not just by duty, but by shared experiences and mutual trust. Together they had faced impossible odds and somehow lived to tell the tale. Their current mission was simple: disrupt supply lines and gather information on the Empire's movements. For months, they had been raiding convoys and intercepting transmissions, slowly piecing together the Empire's plans. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept them alive and maybe, just maybe, gave humanity a fighting chance. One evening, as the Odyssey drifted silently through the void, Megan burst onto the bridge with news that changed everything. "Captain," she said, her voice urgent, "you need to see this." Ryan turned away from the viewport where he had been staring at the endless expanse of stars. "What is it?" Megan handed him a datapad. On it was a transmission they had intercepted earlier that day. It was fragmented, full of static, but clear enough to send chills down Ryan's spine. The message spoke of a weapon, a superweapon, capable of destroying entire star systems. According to the transmission, its components were being assembled at a heavily fortified orbital station called Nexus Prime. Ryan felt his stomach drop. If the Empire completed this weapon, it wouldn't just mean the end for humanity. It would mean the end for every living thing in the galaxy. Entire sectors would be wiped out, reduced to nothing but dust and radiation. The thought made him sick. He glanced around the bridge. The crew watched him expectantly, waiting for orders. He wanted to tell them everything would be okay, that they'd find a way to stop it, but lying to them wouldn't help. Instead, he took a deep breath and spoke. "We can't let them finish it." Megan frowned. "You're talking about attacking Nexus Prime. Do you know how insane that sounds? It's in the middle of Imperial territory, surrounded by warships. We'd never make it out alive." "I know," Ryan admitted. "But we don't have a choice. If we don't do something, billions will die, maybe trillions." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what he was asking hung heavy in the air. Finally, Lisa stepped forward. "If anyone can pull off something like this, it's us," she said with a grim smile. "Besides, dying while doing something worthwhile beats sitting around waiting for the Empire to crush us." Her words broke the tension, and slowly, the others nodded in agreement. They all knew the risks, but they also understood the stakes. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about making sure the Empire didn't win. Over the next few days, the crew threw themselves into preparations. Megan worked tirelessly to modify the Odyssey, disguising it as a damaged freighter, carrying rare minerals. The plan was risky, relying on deception to get close enough to Nexus Prime to strike. Every system on the ship had to be carefully calibrated, not too broken to function, but not so perfect that it raised suspicion. Meanwhile, Ryan pored over maps and intel, planning every detail of the operation. He knew timing would be critical. One wrong move and they'd be blown apart before they even reached the station. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. As they approached Imperial space, the tension aboard the Odyssey grew palpable. The crew moved quietly, speaking only when necessary. Even the hum of the engines seemed louder than usual, each vibration a reminder of what lay ahead. When the first patrol ships appeared on the scanners, everyone held their breath. To their relief, the disguise held. Imperial forces flagged the Odyssey as a harmless freighter and waved it through. Megan monitored the situation closely, ready to jump into action if anything went wrong. But for now, they were safe, or as safe as they could be in enemy territory. When they finally docked at Nexus Prime, Ryan gathered the team for a final briefing. "This is it," he said, his voice steady, despite the storm raging inside him. "Once we're inside, there's no turning back. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're here." No one argued, they all knew what was at stake. As they disembarked, leaving the safety of the Odyssey behind, Ryan couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. Was this truly the right decision? Could they really succeed against such overwhelming odds? But then he looked at his crew, the people who had become his family, and found his answer. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Because sometimes, even the smallest spark could ignite a fire bright enough to light the darkest corners of the galaxy. And so, with hearts pounding and weapons ready, they stepped into the belly of the beast, determined to shift the tide against the Galactic Empire. The moment the SS Odyssey docked at Nexus Prime, the crew felt a shift in the air. The station loomed above them like a mechanical beast, its massive structure bristling with weapons and sensors. It was a fortress in space, designed not just to defend but to intimidate. Every corridor, every wall seemed to pulse with the Empire's power. For Ryan Carter and his team, stepping onto the station felt like walking into the jaws of death. Megan Hayes stayed behind on the Odyssey, her hands flying over the control panels as she monitored the ship's systems. Disguising the vessel had been her idea, but maintaining the illusion was proving harder than she expected. The Empire's patrols were relentless, scanning every ship that passed through their territory. One wrong move, one glitch in the system, and they'd be exposed. Megan clenched her teeth, determined to keep the fragile ruse intact. She trusted Ryan and the others, but the weight of their lives rested heavily on her shoulders. Ryan led the strike team through the docking bay, his heart pounding with each step. He had split the group into two, one to infiltrate the station and sabotage the superweapon, and another to stay behind and ensure their escape route remained open. Megan's voice crackled over their comms, guiding them with updates and warnings. "Stay sharp," she said. "You've got patrol drones incoming." The team ducked into an alcove as a trio of drones buzzed past, their red lights scanning for anomalies. Ryan exchanged a glance with Lisa Bennett, who gave him a quick nod. They had trained for this, rehearsed it until it became second nature. Still, no amount of preparation could fully prepare them for the reality of being so deep in enemy territory. Once the coast was clear, they moved quickly, sticking to the shadows. The corridors of Nexus Prime were eerily quiet, the hum of machinery the only sound breaking the silence. Dr. Alan Foster adjusted the settings on his scanner, searching for the location of the weapon's core components. "We're close," he whispered. "The signal is stronger here." Ryan nodded, motioning for the team to follow. As they rounded a corner, they froze. A squad of Imperial soldiers stood guard outside a set of reinforced doors, their armor gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. There was no way around them, not without drawing attention. Lisa stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the hilt of her blaster. "Let me handle this," she said quietly. Before Ryan could protest, she slipped away, disappearing into the labyrinth of corridors. Moments later, a loud crash echoed through the station. The guards turned toward the noise, barking orders as they rushed to investigate. "Now!" Ryan hissed, signaling the others to move. They sprinted toward the doors, slipping inside just as the guards disappeared from view. On the other side, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with towering machines and glowing consoles. This was it, the heart of the operation. Alan immediately went to work, connecting his scanner to one of the terminals. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he deciphered the data streaming across the screen. "This is worse than we thought," he muttered, his brow furrowing. "The weapon isn't just designed to destroy planets, it can destabilize stars. If they activate it, entire sectors will be wiped out." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. The scale of the Empire's ambition was staggering. If they didn't stop this, there would be no coming back. "How do we disable it?" he asked. Alan hesitated, his expression grim. "We can't just disable it. The components are too integrated into the station's systems. To stop it, we'll have to destroy Nexus Prime itself." The words hung heavy in the air. Destroying the station meant sacrificing anyone still inside, including themselves if they didn't make it out in time. But there was no other option. Ryan clenched his jaw, pushing aside the doubts creeping into his mind. "Do what you need to do," he said. "We'll buy you as much time as we can." As Alan worked, Ryan and Lisa took positions near the entrance, keeping watch for any signs of trouble. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, bathing the chamber in an ominous glow. "They know we're here," Lisa said, her voice tense. "We've got company." Sure enough, the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. A squad of soldiers appeared, their weapons drawn. Ryan raised his blaster, firing off a shot that sent one of them sprawling. "Fall back," he shouted, covering Alan as he frantically typed commands into the terminal. The fight was chaotic, a blur of laser fire and shouts. Lisa held her ground, taking down 2 more soldiers before diving behind cover. Ryan joined her, exchanging shots with the advancing troops. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they couldn't afford to retreat. Not yet. "We're almost done," Alan called out, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Just a few more seconds." Ryan gritted his teeth, squeezing off another round. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Lisa take a hit, stumbling backward. "Lisa!" he yelled, reaching for her. "I'm fine," she snapped, clutching her arm. Blood seeped through her fingers, but she forced herself back into position, firing off another volley. Her determination was unwavering, even as pain radiated through her body. Finally, Alan let out a triumphant shout. "Got it. The explosives are armed. We need to get out of here now." Ryan didn't hesitate. Grabbing Alan by the arm, he pulled him toward the exit. "Move," he ordered, firing one last shot to cover their retreat. The team sprinted through the corridors, the sound of explosions growing louder behind them. The station shook violently, debris raining down from the ceiling. They dodged falling chunks of metal, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Ahead, the docking bay came into view, the Odyssey waiting like a lifeline. But the Empire wasn't about to let them escape. A squadron of elite guards blocked their path, their leader stepping forward with a sneer. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, raising his weapon. Ryan raised his blaster, his mind racing. They were so close to freedom. He couldn't let it end here. Summoning every ounce of courage, he charged forward, firing wildly. The guards returned fire, but Ryan's erratic movements made him a difficult target. Behind him, Lisa and Alan followed, their own weapons blazing. It was chaos, pure and unrelenting. Bullets ricocheted off walls, sparks flying in every direction. Ryan felt a searing pain in his side but ignored it, focusing solely on reaching the ship. One by one, the guards fell until only the leader remained. With a final, desperate shot, Ryan took him down, collapsing to his knees as the adrenaline began to fade. "Come on." Megan's voice crackled over the comm, snapping him back to reality. "Get aboard, we're out of time." Summoning the last of his strength, Ryan staggered toward the Odyssey, dragging Alan with him. Lisa brought up the rear, her face pale but resolute. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the ship's engines roared to life, pulling away from the doomed station. Behind them, Nexus Prime erupted in a brilliant burst of light, consumed by flames and debris. The shockwave rocked the Odyssey, sending everyone tumbling to the floor. For a moment there was only silence, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. Ryan stared out the viewport, watching as the station collapsed in on itself. The mission had been a success, but the cost weighed heavily on him. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made. Yet amidst the grief there was a flicker of hope. They had struck a blow against the Empire, proving that even the smallest resistance could make a difference. As the Odyssey sped away from the wreckage, Megan placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "You shifted the tide." Ryan didn't respond. He simply watched the stars streak past, knowing their fight was far from over. But for now they had won, and sometimes that was enough. The SS Odyssey hurtled through space, its engines straining to put as much distance as possible between itself and the wreckage of Nexus Prime. The crew sat in stunned silence, their bodies battered and bruised but alive. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what they had just done and what it had cost hung heavy in the air. Ryan Carter leaned against the viewport, his hands gripping the edge as he stared at the stars streaking past. His mind replayed the events over and over again, the chaos, the gunfire, the sacrifices. Lisa's voice echoed in his head, her determination even as she bled on the station floor. She hadn't made it back. None of the guards who had fallen would ever see their families again. And while Nexus Prime was gone, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the Empire's plans. This victory felt hollow. Megan Hayes broke the silence first. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "We did it," she said, though her tone carried little triumph. She stood near the control panel, her fingers brushing over the dials and switches that kept the ship running. "Nexus Prime is gone." Ryan didn't turn around. "At what cost?" he muttered under his breath. He knew Megan had heard him, but she didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked over to where Alan Foster was slumped in a chair, clutching his side. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage wrapped around his ribs, but he was conscious, barely. "How are you holding up?" Megan asked, kneeling beside him. Alan winced as she adjusted the bandage. "I've been better," he admitted with a weak smile. "But I'll live, thanks to you two." His eyes flicked toward Ryan, then back to Megan. "We stopped them. That weapon won't destroy any stars." "Not this one, anyway," Ryan said, finally turning to face them. His expression was grim. "You heard what Alan said back there. The Empire has more of these weapons. Nexus Prime was just one piece of the puzzle. If we don't stop them from building others, this whole mission was for nothing." Megan straightened, her jaw tightening. "So what do we do now? Keep fighting until we're all dead?" "No," Ryan said firmly. "We keep fighting because it's the only way to survive. If we give up now everything Lisa gave her life for, it means nothing." His words struck a chord with the crew. They had all lost people they cared about. Family, friends, comrades. The Empire had taken so much from them, and yet here they were still standing, still resisting. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity could rise above the darkness. Hours passed as the Odyssey drifted further into uncharted territory. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage sustained during the escape. Panels were pried open, wires reconnected, and systems rebooted. Megan moved like a whirlwind, her hands never stopping as she patched up the ship's battered hull. Despite her exhaustion, she refused to slow down. Every second counted. Meanwhile, Ryan gathered the remaining crew members in the briefing room. The mood was somber, but there was also a flicker of determination in their eyes. They had faced the Empire head-on and lived to tell the tale. Now they needed a plan. "We hit them where it hurts," Ryan began, pacing back and forth. "Nexus Prime was a blow, but it's not enough. We need to strike at the heart of their operations, the places they think are untouchable." Alan nodded slowly, wincing as the movement jarred his injury. "If we can find out where they're building more of those weapons, we can take them out before they're finished. But gathering that kind of intel won't be easy." "That's where we come in." Lisa's replacement, Corporal Emma Clark, spoke up. A young soldier with sharp features and even sharper instincts, Emma had joined the crew after losing her home to the Empire's conquests. She carried a deep hatred for the Empire, but also a fierce loyalty to her teammates. "We'll go in quiet, gather what we need, and get out before they know we're there." Ryan considered her words. Sneaking into Imperial facilities was risky, but it might be their best chance. "Agreed," he said finally. "But we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the stronger they'll become." The next few days were a blur of preparation. The crew pored over maps and intercepted transmissions, searching for clues about the Empire's other projects. Megan worked tirelessly to upgrade the Odyssey, adding new stealth systems and reinforcing the shields. Every modification brought them closer to being ready, but not without cost. Supplies were running low and tempers flared as fatigue set in. One evening, as Ryan stood alone on the bridge, Megan joined him. She held 2 cups of coffee, offering one to him without a word. He accepted it gratefully, taking a sip before speaking. "You look like hell," Megan said bluntly. "So do you," Ryan replied with a faint smile. "Thanks for keeping the ship together. I don't know what we'd do without you." Megan shrugged, leaning against the console. "Someone has to keep this flying junkyard in one piece. Besides, it's not like I have anything better to do." Her attempt at humor fell flat, and they both knew it. The truth was, none of them had much left outside the Odyssey. Their lives revolved around the fight against the Empire, and every mission brought them closer to either victory or death. After a moment of silence, Megan spoke again. "Do you really think we can pull this off? Take down the Empire, I mean." Ryan hesitated, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. "I don't know," he admitted. "But if we don't try, who will? Humanity has been pushed to the brink, Megan. If we don't stand up now, there won't be anything left to save." Megan nodded, her gaze distant. "Then let's make sure we're ready." Their opportunity came sooner than expected. While analyzing intercepted signals, Alan discovered a massive research facility hidden on the outskirts of Imperial space. Dubbed Eclipse Point, it was rumored to be the Empire's primary hub for developing advanced weaponry. If they could infiltrate the facility, they might uncover blueprints, prototypes, or even intel on future targets. The catch? Eclipse Point was buried deep underground, protected by layers of security and surrounded by a network of patrols. Getting inside would require precision, timing, and a lot of luck. Ryan called another meeting to lay out the plan. "This isn't going to be easy," he warned. "Eclipse Point is heavily guarded, and if we're caught, there's no backup coming. We go in silent, grab what we need, and get out before anyone realizes we're there." Emma raised a hand. "What about distractions? If we can draw their attention elsewhere, it might give us a window to slip in unnoticed." Alan nodded thoughtfully. "It's risky, but it could work. We'd need something big enough to pull their forces away from the facility." "I've got an idea," Megan interjected. "There's an old mining outpost nearby, abandoned but still rigged with explosives left over from when the Empire stripped it clean. If we detonate those charges, it'll look like a rebel attack." Ryan mulled it over. It was dangerous, too dangerous, but it might be their only shot. "All right," he said finally. "Megan, prep the explosives. Emma, you're with me. We'll handle the infiltration. Alan, stay aboard the Odyssey and monitor our progress. If things go south, you get us out of there." The team dispersed to prepare, each member focused on their role. As the hours ticked by, the tension aboard the ship grew palpable. Everyone knew the stakes. One misstep, one wrong move, and it could all end in disaster. When the time came, the Odyssey approached the mining outpost under cover of darkness. Megan deployed the explosives remotely, triggering a massive explosion that lit up the night sky. Imperial forces scrambled to respond, drawing their attention away from Eclipse Point. Meanwhile, Ryan and Emma slipped into the facility using stolen uniforms and forged credentials. The corridors were eerily quiet, the hum of machinery the only sound breaking the silence. Emma led the way, her blaster drawn as she scanned for threats. Ryan followed close behind, carrying a datapad loaded with hacking tools. They reached the main lab without incident, thanks to Emma's quick thinking and Ryan's ability to bluff their way past suspicious guards. Inside, they found rows of terminals displaying schematics for experimental weapons. Alan's voice crackled over the comm. "That's it. Download everything you can." Ryan inserted the datapad into the nearest terminal, initiating the transfer. The process was agonizingly slow, each second stretching into an eternity. Just as the download neared completion, alarms blared throughout the facility. "They know." "We're here," Emma hissed, taking position near the door. "Hurry up." Ryan worked faster, his fingers flying across the controls. Finally, the transfer completed, and he yanked the datapad free. "Let's go." They sprinted through the corridors, dodging patrols and returning fire as they made their way back to the extraction point. The Odyssey hovered nearby, its engines idling as Megan guided them to safety. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, sparks flying in every direction. As they reached the ship, Ryan turned back for one last look at Eclipse Point. Somewhere inside, the evidence they had gathered would expose the Empire's secrets, and maybe, just maybe, inspire others to join the fight. Once aboard, Megan punched the throttle, sending the Odyssey rocketing into space. Behind them, Eclipse Point faded into the distance, swallowed by the vastness of the galaxy. For now, they had succeeded. But the war was far from over. And somewhere, deep within the Empire's stronghold, the Emperor watched the stars burn, unaware that his reign was beginning to crumble. The SS Odyssey raced through the void, its engines humming with a desperate urgency. The crew worked in silence, their movements precise but weary. They had escaped Eclipse Point with valuable intel, but the cost of their success weighed heavily on everyone. Ryan Carter sat in the captain's chair, staring at the datapad containing the stolen files. Each schematic and blueprint was a piece of the Empire's dark plans, a glimpse into the machinery of destruction they were fighting against. But the knowledge didn't bring relief. It only deepened the sense of responsibility pressing down on him. Megan Hayes stood nearby, her hands resting on the control panel as she monitored the ship's systems. Her red hair was tied back in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame her face. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion, but she refused to rest until they were safe. "We're clear for now," she said quietly, glancing at the radar. "No sign of pursuit." Ryan nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Good, but don't let your guard down. The Empire doesn't give up easily." Alan Foster, still recovering from his injuries, sat hunched over another terminal. His fingers moved across the keyboard as he analyzed the data they had retrieved. The information was dense, filled with technical jargon and encrypted codes, but Alan was determined to make sense of it all. "This is worse than I thought," he muttered, shaking his head. "They're not just building one superweapon, they're mass-producing them. If we don't stop them soon, there won't be any stopping them at all." Emma Clark leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She had been unusually quiet since their escape, her sharp features tense with unspoken thoughts. Finally, she spoke. "So what's the plan? We've got the intel. Now what?" Ryan turned to face her, his voice steady despite the storm brewing. Inside him, "We spread the word. Use this information to rally the resistance. If other rebel cells see what we're up against and that we can fight back, they'll join us. Together, we might stand a chance." It sounded simple enough, but the reality was far more complicated. The rebellion was fractured, scattered, across the galaxy like shards of glass. Many groups operated independently, distrustful of outsiders and unwilling to share resources. Convincing them to unite under a single banner would take more than stolen blueprints. It would take proof that victory was possible. Over the next few days, the crew worked tirelessly to decode and organize the data. Megan helped Alan whenever she could, using her engineering skills to bypass encryption and piece together fragmented files. Slowly, a clearer picture emerged. The Empire was constructing multiple weapons facilities, each specializing in different components of the superweapons. These facilities were spread across Imperial space, connected by supply lines that crisscrossed the galaxy. "We need to hit these supply lines," Ryan said during one of their briefings. "Cut off their resources, disrupt their operations. It's the only way to slow them down." Emma nodded in agreement. "And while we're doing that, we can use the intel to warn anyone in the path of those weapons. Give them a chance to prepare or evacuate." "It's risky," Megan pointed out. "Attacking supply lines means going deeper into Imperial territory. Every move we make will put us in danger." Ryan met her gaze, his resolve unwavering. "We don't have a choice. If we stay on the defensive, we'll lose. We have to take the fight to them, even if it means risking everything." The decision was unanimous. The crew knew the risks, but they also understood the stakes. Humanity's survival depended on their actions. With renewed determination, they plotted their next moves, identifying key targets along the Empire's supply routes. Their first target was a convoy, transporting critical materials to one of the weapons facilities. The operation required precision and timing. Using the Odyssey's stealth systems, they positioned themselves near the convoy's route, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Megan monitored the ship's systems, ensuring the cloaking device held steady. Any malfunction could expose their position and doom the mission. As the convoy approached, Ryan gave the signal. "All right, team, let's do this." Emma led the boarding party, guiding a small shuttle toward the largest freighter in the convoy. The ship's hull loomed above them like a metal giant, its surface scarred from years of travel. Emma maneuvered the shuttle into the docking bay, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Once inside, the team moved, quickly disabling security systems and neutralizing guards before they could raise the alarm. Ryan stayed behind on the Odyssey, coordinating the attack. His voice crackled over the comm as he guided the team through the ship. "You've got 10 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Make it count." Inside the freighter, Alan worked feverishly to sabotage the cargo. Explosives were planted strategically throughout the hold, set to detonate once the team made it back to the shuttle. "Let's go," he shouted, pulling himself to his feet despite the pain in his side. The team retraced their steps, dodging patrols and slipping past locked doors. Just as they reached the docking bay, alarms blared throughout the ship. Reinforcements had arrived sooner than expected. "Move!" Emma yelled, firing off rounds to cover their retreat. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, sparks flying in every direction. The team sprinted toward the shuttle, diving aboard just as the first explosion rocked the freighter. Megan watched from the Odyssey as the convoy erupted in flames, debris scattering across space. A satisfied smile tugged at her lips. "That ought to slow them down," she said. But Ryan wasn't celebrating. He stared at the wreckage, his mind already turning to the next target. This was just the beginning. News of the attack spread quickly through rebel channels. The destruction of Nexus Prime and the successful raid on the convoy inspired others to take action. Resistance cells that had once operated in isolation began reaching out to one another, sharing intelligence and resources. For the first time in years, there was hope, a fragile ember flickering in the darkness. Ryan and his crew became symbols of defiance, their names whispered among rebels as legends in the making. Messages poured into the Odyssey, requesting guidance or offering support. Some even volunteered to join their cause, swelling their ranks with new recruits. But with increased visibility came increased danger. The Empire took notice of the growing rebellion, deploying additional forces to crush it before it gained momentum. Patrols grew more frequent and checkpoints appeared along major trade routes. The noose tightened around the rebels, forcing them to adapt or perish. Despite the mounting pressure, Ryan refused to back down. He gathered his crew for another briefing, laying out their strategy. "We've struck blows against the Empire, but they're still strong. To win this war, we need to unite the resistance. Show them we can stand together." "And how do we do that?" Megan asked, her tone skeptical. "Most of these groups don't trust anyone outside their own cells." "We prove ourselves," Ryan replied. "By leading the charge. By showing them we're willing to risk everything, for them, for humanity, for the future." The crew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew they couldn't turn back now. This was their fight, and they would see it through to the end. As the Odyssey prepared for its next mission, Ryan stood alone on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, vast and unknowable. Somewhere out there, the Empire plotted its next move, its leaders confident in their power. But Ryan believed in something stronger than fear: hope. And as long as there were people willing to fight for it, the Empire's reign would never truly be absolute. Turning away from the viewport, he joined his crew, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to strike against the Empire one blow at a time until the tide turned in their favor. Because sometimes, even the smallest spark could ignite a fire bright enough to light the darkest corners of the galaxy. The SS Odyssey drifted silently through the stars, its battered hull bearing the scars of countless battles. The ship may have looked like it was held together by sheer willpower, but to Ryan Carter and his crew, it was more than just a vessel. It was home, a symbol of their defiance against the Galactic Empire. Inside, the mood was tense but focused. The rebellion was growing stronger, but so was the Empire's response. Every victory came at a cost, and every mission brought them closer to either triumph or disaster. Ryan stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic map projected before him. It showed the locations of Imperial supply lines, weapons facilities, and patrol routes, all information they had gathered during their raids. Megan Hayes worked beside him, adjusting the settings to highlight weak points in the Empire's defenses. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, her fingers deftly navigating the complex interface. Despite her exhaustion, she refused to slow down. "If we hit here," she said, pointing to a cluster of freighters near a heavily guarded outpost, "we can cripple their operations in this sector." Ryan studied the map, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's risky," he admitted. "That outpost is crawling with troops. If we're caught, there's no way out." "We've been in tighter spots," Emma Clark chimed in from across the room. She leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her sharp features were set in determination, her voice steady despite the danger. "Besides, if we don't take the risk, the Empire will keep building those weapons. We can't let that happen." Alan Foster sat nearby, scrolling through the stolen data on a separate terminal. His face was pale, but his mind was sharp as ever. "They're planning something big," he said, his tone grim. "The intel mentions a massive offensive, a coordinated attack on rebel strongholds. If we don't act soon, they'll crush the resistance before it has a chance to grow." Ryan clenched his jaw, his resolve hardening. "Then we strike first. Hit them where it hurts. Make them focus on us instead of the other cells." The plan was simple but dangerous. The crew would infiltrate the outpost under the cover of darkness, sabotage the freighters, and escape before the Empire realized what had happened. To increase their chances of success, Megan modified the Odyssey's cloaking system, ensuring they could approach undetected. She also rigged several drones with explosives, programming them to create diversions once the team was inside. As they prepared for the mission, the crew worked tirelessly, each member playing a crucial role. Megan fine-tuned the cloaking device, her hands moving with practiced precision. Alan double-checked the sabotage plans, ensuring every detail was accounted for. Emma cleaned and reloaded her blaster, her movements methodical and deliberate. Even Ryan spent hours reviewing the operation, running through every possible scenario in his mind. Finally, the moment came. The Odyssey slipped into position near the outpost, its systems humming softly as the cloaking device masked its presence. Ryan gave the signal and the team boarded a small shuttle, leaving Megan behind to monitor their progress. As the shuttle detached from the ship, Megan's voice crackled over the comm. "Good luck," she said simply. "Don't get yourselves killed." Ryan managed a faint smile. "We'll be back before you know it." The infiltration went smoothly. At first, the team landed in a secluded area, avoiding patrols as they made their way toward the freighters. Emma led the way, her keen eyes scanning for threats. Ryan followed close behind, carrying a bag filled with explosives. Alan brought up the rear, clutching a scanner to guide them through the maze of corridors. They reached the docking bay without incident, slipping aboard one of the freighters. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and metal. The ship's interior was dimly lit, its walls lined with crates of supplies destined for the Empire's weapons facilities. Alan immediately set to work planting explosives, his hands steady despite the tension. "This should do it," he muttered, setting the timer. But as they moved to the next freighter, things began to go wrong. A patrol rounded the corner, spotting them before they could hide. Blaster fire erupted, filling the corridor with flashes of light and the deafening roar of explosions. Ryan and Emma returned fire, taking cover behind crates as the guards advanced. "Fall back!" Ryan shouted, firing off another round. "We've got to get out of here." Emma hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to stay and fight. But she knew Ryan was right. They couldn't afford to be pinned down. Grabbing Alan by the arm, she pulled him toward the exit, covering their retreat with precise shots. Ryan followed, his heart pounding as bullets whizzed past his head. They reached the shuttle just as the first explosion rocked the outpost. Flames engulfed the docking bay, sending debris flying in every direction. The team scrambled aboard, slamming the hatch shut behind them. "Go!" Ryan yelled, strapping himself in. Emma punched the throttle, sending the shuttle rocketing into space. Behind them, the outpost collapsed in on itself, consumed by fire and chaos. For a moment, no one spoke, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as adrenaline coursed through their veins. Back aboard the Odyssey, Megan greeted them with a mixture of relief and frustration. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, handing Ryan a cup of coffee. "What happened?" "They spotted us," Ryan replied, taking a sip of the steaming liquid. "But we got the job done. Those freighters won't be delivering anything anytime soon." Megan nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "The Empire's not going to take this lying down. They'll come after us harder than ever now. We knew that going in," Emma said, her voice firm. "And we're ready for them." Despite her bravado, the truth was undeniable. The stakes were higher than ever. With each successful raid, the rebellion gained ground, but the Empire fought, back with increasing ferocity. Patrols grew more frequent and checkpoints appeared along major trade routes. The noose tightened around the rebels, forcing them to adapt or perish. Days turned into weeks as the crew continued their campaign against the Empire. They struck targets across Imperial space, disrupting supply lines and destroying key facilities. Each mission brought new challenges, testing their limits and pushing them to their breaking point. But with every victory, the rebellion grew stronger. Messages poured into the Odyssey, offering support and pledging allegiance to their cause. One evening, as the crew gathered in the briefing room, Alan shared some unexpected news. "I've been analyzing the intel," he began, his voice tinged with excitement. "There's a pattern, specifically in the Empire's communications. It seems they're planning something massive, a final push to crush the rebellion once and for all." Ryan frowned, leaning forward in his chair. "Where?" Alan hesitated, his gaze flickering to the others. "The throne world, their capital." A heavy silence fell over the room. The throne world was the heart of the Empire, a fortress surrounded by endless fleets of warships. Attacking it directly was suicide, but ignoring it meant giving the Empire free rein to annihilate the rebellion. After a long pause, Ryan spoke. "If we don't stop them, everything we've fought for will be lost. We need to strike at the core of their power, the Emperor himself." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about assassinating the Emperor? That's insane." It's impossible, Megan added, shaking her head. Even if we somehow make it to the throne world, how do we get close enough to take him down? We find a way, Ryan said firmly. Because if we don't, there won't be a future for anyone. The crew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. They knew the risks, but they also understood the stakes. This was their chance to end the war, to strike a blow so decisive that the Empire would never recover. As the Odyssey plotted its course toward Aizadar, the throne world, Ryan stood alone on the bridge gazing out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, vast and unknowable. Somewhere out there, the Emperor sat on his throne, confident in his power. But Ryan believed in something stronger than fear, hope. And as long as there were people willing to fight for it, the Empire's reign would never truly be absolute. Turning away from the viewport, he joined his crew, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to strike against the Empire, one blow at a time until the tide turned in their favor. Because sometimes, even the smallest spark could ignite a fire bright enough to light the darkest corners of the galaxy. The SS Odyssey drifted silently through the void, its crew preparing for what might be their final mission. The throne world loomed ahead, a massive planet surrounded by layers of warships and orbital defenses. It was the heart of the Empire, the seat of its power, and the place where humanity's fate would be decided. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the glowing blue orb in the distance. His mind raced with doubts, but he pushed them aside. There was no turning back now. Megan Hayes worked tirelessly at her station, rerouting power to the ship's engines and shields. Her hands moved with practiced precision, though her knuckles were white from gripping the controls too tightly. She glanced up at Ryan, her expression unreadable. "We're not ready for this," she said softly. "Not really." Ryan didn't respond right away. He knew she was right. Their ship was battered, their resources stretched thin, and their odds of success were slim at best. But they had come too far to give up now. "Maybe we're not ready," he admitted finally. "But if we don't try, who will?" Megan nodded, swallowing hard. She turned back to her console, focusing on the task at hand. If they were going to take down the Emperor, every system aboard the Odyssey had to be functioning perfectly, or as close to perfect as they could manage. Alan Foster sat in the corner of the bridge, poring over the stolen intel. His eyes darted across the screen, analyzing patterns in the Empire's communications. "There's a gap in their defense grid," he announced suddenly, his voice tinged with excitement. "A small window where patrols overlap. If we time it right, we can slip through." Emma Clark leaned over his shoulder, studying the map. "How long does the window last?" "Not long," Alan replied. "Maybe 10 minutes. After that, we're sitting ducks." "That's all we need," Ryan said firmly. 10 minutes is enough." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? Because if we mess this up, we're dead." "We've been in worse situations," Ryan reminded her. "And we've always made it out alive." Emma didn't argue further. She trusted Ryan, even if the plan seemed impossible. They had faced overwhelming odds before and somehow managed to prevail. Maybe luck, or sheer determination, would carry them through once again. As the Odyssey approached the throne world, Megan activated the cloaking device, masking their presence from Imperial sensors. The ship slipped into the gap in the defense grid, just as Alan had predicted. For those 10 agonizing minutes, the crew held their breath, praying the cloak wouldn't fail. When they emerged on the other side, unscathed and undetected, a collective sigh of relief swept through the ship. But their challenges were far from over. Landing on the throne world itself was another matter entirely. The planet's surface was a maze of fortified cities, military bases, and surveillance systems. Getting close to the Emperor would require more than stealth. It would require deception. Ryan gathered the team in the briefing room, laying out their plan. "We'll disguise ourselves as Imperial officers," he explained. "Use fake credentials to gain access to the palace. Once we're inside, we'll find a way to reach the Emperor." "And if we're caught?" Emma asked, her tone skeptical. "We improvise," Ryan said simply. We've done it before. The crew exchanged uneasy glances but nodded in agreement. They had no other choice. This was their chance to end the war, to strike a blow so decisive that the Empire would never recover. The next phase of the mission required careful preparation. Megan modified their uniforms, ensuring they matched the design worn by high-ranking Imperial officials. Alan forged identification cards using data from the stolen intel, while Emma practiced impersonating the clipped, authoritative tone of an Imperial officer. Ryan rehearsed his role as the leader of their group, memorizing details about the Empire's hierarchy to avoid suspicion. When everything was ready, they boarded a shuttle and descended toward the planet's surface. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they passed through layers of cloud, the sprawling capital city coming into view below. Towering spires of metal and glass pierced the sky, their surfaces gleaming under the artificial sunlight. Armored vehicles patrolled the streets and soldiers stood guard at every checkpoint. Landing at a designated docking bay, the team disembarked, their hearts pounding. Ryan led the way, his posture rigid and confident. He flashed their forged IDs at the guards, who barely glanced at them before waving them through. So far, so good. Inside the palace, the air was heavy with opulence and authority. Gold-lined corridors stretched endlessly, lined with statues of past emperors and murals depicting the Empire's conquests. Servants scurried about, avoiding eye contact with anyone in uniform. Ryan and his team blended in seamlessly, their disguises holding up under scrutiny. They reached the throne room without incident thanks to Alan's hacking skills disabling security cameras along the way. As they stepped inside, the sight of the Emperor took their breath away. He sat atop a massive golden throne, his regal robes flowing around him like liquid light. Around him stood a ring of elite guards, their weapons drawn and ready. Ryan's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. But how could they possibly get past the guards? Then, inspiration struck. He stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady, "we bring urgent news from Nexus Prime. A rebel fleet has infiltrated the sector and is advancing toward the throne world." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. "Nexus Prime? That station was destroyed months ago." Ryan hesitated, his heart hammering in his chest. "Yes, Your Majesty, but the rebels have found a way to exploit its remains. They're using it as a staging ground for their attack." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then the Emperor gestured for his guards to stand down. "Explain yourself," he commanded. Ryan seized the opportunity, launching into a fabricated story about rebel movements and weaknesses. While he spoke, Emma and Alan positioned themselves strategically, ready to act. Megan, who had stayed behind on the shuttle, monitored their progress remotely, providing updates via comms. As Ryan continued his tale, distracting the Emperor, Emma discreetly pulled a small device from her belt, a prototype weapon developed by Alan. She aimed it carefully, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. With a quiet beep, the device activated, emitting a pulse that disabled the guards' weapons. Chaos erupted as the guards realized they were unarmed. Ryan shouted, "Now!" and the team sprang into action. Blaster fire filled the room, echoing off the marble walls. The Emperor rose from his throne, his expression one of shock and fury. He lunged toward a hidden control panel, likely intending to summon reinforcements. But Ryan was faster. He tackled the Emperor to the ground, pinning him down as the others secured the room. The fight was brutal and chaotic, but in the end, the crew emerged victorious. The Emperor lay defeated, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt halt. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew gathered on the bridge, watching as the throne world grew smaller in the distance. News of the Emperor's fall spread quickly, sparking celebrations among rebel cells across the galaxy. The Empire crumbled without its leader, its forces retreating or surrendering en masse. Ryan stared out at the stars, his mind heavy with thoughts of all they had lost and all they had gained. The war was over, but the scars would remain. Still, there was hope. For the first time in years, the galaxy felt free. Megan placed a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said softly. Against all odds, we actually did it. Ryan nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, we did. As the Odyssey sailed into the unknown, the crew knew their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, rebuilding shattered worlds, forging new alliances, and healing old wounds. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, knowing they had changed the course of history. And somewhere deep in the vast expanse of space, the stars burned brighter, as if celebrating the dawn of a new era.